What's happening right now is nothing short of earth-shaking. The familiar world, one that's been arrogantly led by the United States and Europe for centuries, is crumbling. That dominance was presumptuous from the start, and we're witnessing the end of a colossal cycle that stretches all the way back to 1492. Think about it. Christopher Columbus kicked this off with a voyage that went hilariously off course and reshaped the world in brutal ways. Fun fact, they say Columbus was an economist because he had no clue where he was going, no idea where he was when he got there, and did it all on a government grant. Classic, but seriously, that era birthed a European-led world soaked in cruelty, staggering inequality, and ruthless domination. Sure, there were mind-blowing technological leaps, but they were often weaponized as tools of power and oppression. The United States took the reins after 1945, ruling with an iron grip for about half a century. But now we're in a radically different world, and it's time to listen up. Hey everyone, let me take just a few minutes to dive into the wild state of the world right now, because trust me, the last couple of days have been absolutely dramatic. There's no ironclad guarantee we'll dodge a catastrophic disaster, because frankly, the world's leadership is a mess. We're teetering on the edge of a dangerously unstable situation, and it's fueled by everything we've been talking about: the devastating climate crisis, the chaotic upheavals in the global economy, and let's be real, some utterly reckless interventions by so-called leaders. But amidst this storm, something else is happening, something incredibly dramatic and game-changing. The geopolitical landscape is shifting in ways that are both terrifyingly risky and honestly not entirely bad. Let's break this down. What's happening right now is nothing short of earth-shaking. The familiar world, one that's been arrogantly led by the United States and Europe for centuries, is crumbling. That dominance was presumptuous from the start, and we're witnessing the end of a colossal cycle that stretches all the way back to 1492. Think about it. Christopher Columbus kicked this off with a voyage that went hilariously off course and reshaped the world in brutal ways. Fun fact, they say Columbus was an economist because he had no clue where he was going, no idea where he was when he got there, and did it all on a government grant. Classic. But seriously, that era birthed a European-led world soaked in cruelty, staggering inequality, and ruthless domination. Sure, there were mind-blowing technological leaps, but they were often weaponized as tools of power and oppression. The United States took the reins after 1945, ruling with an iron grip for about half a century. But now we're in a radically different world, and it's time to listen up. I'm Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, and I'm here to tell you that the voices from other corners of the globe are growing louder, more vital, and incredibly important. This shift is causing a tidal wave of anxiety in the Western media and political circles, way more than in places like China or India. Over there, the vibe isn't doom and gloom. It's optimistic, even exhilarating. They see the world changing for the better, moving in a hopeful direction. And get this, if you check opinion surveys in Africa, there's a staggering amount of optimism. It's the most upbeat continent on the planet right now. So while the world transforms, the panic is loudest in the US. Nobody likes getting knocked off the top spot, right? But let's face it, the world is becoming infinitely more fascinating, beautifully diverse, and powerfully interconnected. Look around, you're a wonderfully diverse group here, but not quite diverse enough. Are there any Chinese faces in the room? No. Okay, someone from Hong Kong, awesome, that's a start. Hong Kong is incredible, by the way, I was just there. And India, great. We've got representation between those two. You're about 40% of the world's population, but not quite 40% of this room. My point, we don't need perfect demographic balance, but diversity matters tremendously. The world is even more varied than this group, and we've got to strive for that inclusivity. From my perspective, I've got a grim warning and a wildly hopeful outlook to share. If we don't blow everything up, and yes, that's a real risk, things could actually turn out okay. I'm talking about a world that's shaping up to be fairer, more open, and genuinely benefiting from jaw-dropping tech breakthroughs. But here's my gut-wrenching worry: short-term disaster. My country, the United States, is the worst led it's ever been. Our political system has collapsed into a shocking one-person rule, which is no way to govern a nation of 335 million people and a $30 trillion economy. It's a disaster waiting to happen. Yet if we can dodge these catastrophic pitfalls, there's real, tangible hope, not just empty rhetoric. We've got brilliant solutions for food production, sustainable energy, better education, and healthcare systems, truly wonderful innovations. You're pioneering many of them, but they're not being rolled out at the scale or speed we desperately need. The good news: there's no fundamental shortage of resources or know-how. We're not running out of minerals, land, or energy. Solar radiation alone is 5,000 times our global power usage, and solar power is now cheaper than anything else. We're not in an energy crisis or a knowledge drought. What we are facing is a heartbreaking shortage of fairness, a crippling lack of kindness, a desperate scarcity of calm. We're mired in a geopolitical nightmare and staggering instability from climate upheavals that will intensify over the next 50 years no matter what we do. The warming is baked into the system and the shocks are coming. But we can buffer the impacts, build resilience, and adapt if we act now. So where are we at? Just yesterday, the U.S. declared itself outside the World Trade System. 2 weeks ago, it opted out of the climate challenge. 3 weeks ago, it abandoned the sustainability fight. 4 weeks ago, it walked away from global health efforts. Honestly, it doesn't get more infuriatingly dumb than this. The U.S. is just 4.1% of the world's population, and while it's throwing tantrums, the other 95% isn't backing down. In fact, they're stepping up with fierce determination. And even amid America's bizarre behavior, there are stunningly positive developments. Take China and India, two nations at odds for over 80 years, due to a ridiculous arbitrary borderline drawn by the British in the Himalayas. That nonsense known as the McMahon Line was sketched by a guy who'd never even been there. Recently, their foreign ministers met and said, "Why are we fighting? Let's trade more, invest more." Prime Minister Modi and President Xi followed with encouraging, forward-thinking statements. That's huge. Last week, another miracle unfolded. China, Korea, and Japan, divided for years by U.S. meddling that pitted them against each other, came together. They realized the U.S. isn't the reliable protector it claims to be, and decided to strengthen ties among themselves. This is massively positive. And look at Iran and Saudi Arabia, historically split by U.S.-fueled Shia-Sunni tensions. Last year, they reconciled with China's brilliant mediation, something the U.S. would never have considered. I'm not pessimistic at all. I see a world transforming. Sure, U.S. newspapers are full of doom because they're obsessed with America as number one, but step outside that bubble and it's a different story. I welcome a world where China, India, the African Union, and Saudi Arabia play larger dynamic roles. It's a world of vibrant diversity, better food, richer conversations, more incredible places to visit, and far more exciting problem solving. If you're a U.S. strategist, it might look grim and terrifying, but I don't buy into that inevitable crisis narrative. Yes, there's danger, I've outlined why, but it's not a foregone conclusion. Here's what I'm asking of you: stay on this networking path, keep tackling practical solutions, and dive into problem solving with relentless energy. I'm committed to helping you do that. Through initiatives like SDSN Youth, it's not just about empowering youth for the sake of it. It's about solving global problems, and you've got a ton of solutions. We might have more access to certain spaces with our gray hair and experience, but you've got the edge on tech, fixing our phones, mastering the latest apps, and understanding what's next. That's invaluable, unique knowledge in today's world. You belong at the table for 2 reasons: to protect your generation's interests against out-of-touch leaders who can't think ahead, and more crucially, to drive this agenda forward in a profound way. I got lucky early in my career, thrust into roles where I could make an impact, and thank goodness it worked out. You can do the same, and I'm here to help. We can network, learn together, and grow. Don't assume you know everything, but also don't doubt what you see with your own eyes. Solutions that can work. Looking ahead, post-2030, you'll play a pivotal role. Let's be honest, we won't hit all the targets set on September 25, 2015, when Pope Francis launched the Sustainable Development Goals at the UN. Those were ambitious stretch goals requiring immense cooperation and capacity, something the major powers largely failed to deliver. In my view, China made a serious effort with initiatives like the Belt and Road. Africa launched the Continental Free Trade Area, a fantastic step. Europe talked a good game early on, but got derailed by conflicts like Ukraine, which I see as a tragic misstep. Fueled by the U.S., Inability to broker peace. After 1991, there was a chance for true collective security in Europe, but instead NATO expanded and opportunities were squandered. The US didn't try hard and, globally, the effort was lackluster. We lost time to crises, some like the pandemic, arguably man-made through mishaps I won't dive into now. So what's next? My hope is we stick with the Sustainable Development Goals framework. It's taken a decade for governments to even begin grasping how to handle such a complex, multidimensional planning process with 17 major objectives. Scrapping it for a new set of goals would be a disastrous waste of time. Yes, we'll need to tweak them. Maybe add something like artificial intelligence as SDG 18 or repackage objectives. But we should keep this structure through mid-century to 2050. That's the timeline we need to decarbonize energy, transform agriculture, and build a digital society where tech does good, not harm. This will likely be decided around 2027 or 2028 through a UN process, commissions deliberations, youth ambassadors, national and global forums. We need to strategize together, outreach to more groups, and push this forward. One brutal challenge is long-term thinking beyond the short horizons governments are used to. Changing the energy system isn't a 1-year, 5-year, or even 10-year process. It's 25 to 30 years of tech shifts and political planning. Most governments, except perhaps China, aren't great at this. Europe sets goals but often fails on delivery. I also have sky-high hopes and demands for the African Union. With a new commission in place since March 15th, Africa must make a breakthrough in the next 30 years. Conflicts, kids out of school, lack of electricity for hundreds of millions, it can't continue. We discussed this in a recent Financing for Development workshop, how to make those leaps. I'm asking you to champion radical transformation in your countries and regions. Together on a global scale, we can create a brighter future, not just wishful thinking, but practical hard work. Education is a cornerstone. It must be fun, engaging, and universal. Right now, around 300 million kids aren't even in school. That's outrageous. Some are out due to conflict or displacement. But for 250 million, it's simply because governments lack funds for teachers and schools. I want us to throw a collective fit at the powers that be host countries, the IMF, the World Bank, China, anyone. This cannot go on. Kids without education have no future. It's the most fundamental issue we face. Every one of you fought through struggles with help from parents, friends, or family to get educated. We must demand the same for every child. No more faking it, no more excuses. We'll secure the financing. I'm committed to that. But you need to lay out operational plans, inspire your communities, businesses, and leaders. Think big, really big. Technologies and so forth. So that's what I think we will be, what I am going to be aiming for in the next few years. This will probably be decided more or less around 27 or 2027 or 2028. So there will be a UN process. The next Secretary General will assign a commission. Probably there'll be deliberations. You'll be involved in national level and global processes and youth ambassadors and many ways. And we should really strategize together about this. And you should make further outreach to other groups. In order to do this, one basic point is that what makes all of this very hard is thinking ahead on a time horizon and a complexity longer than governments know how to do. So if you want to change the energy system, it's not a 1-year or a 5-year or a 10-year process. You really have to be able to think about 25 years or 30 years and basic changes of technology and learn how to put that into a real political process and so forth. And this is what I find most governments don't know how to do effectively. Again, China is better at planning in this way than any other government that I know among the major governments. Europe's not bad at setting goals, but it then doesn't necessarily actually create the planning to deliver them very effectively. I'll say also I have huge hopes, expectations, and demands of the African Union in the coming years. There's a new AU Commission that just came into office on March 15th, and Africa needs to make a breakthrough in the next 30 years. It can't go on like this with many conflicts, with kids not in school, with the systems not working, with electricity not reaching still hundreds of millions of people. And that's what we were discussing in the Financing for Development workshop that we had earlier this week, how to make those breakthroughs. So one thing I'm asking of you is helping to instill the idea of really basic transformation in your country's regions. And since we're going to do it together at a world scale, that yes, we really can create a better future. And it's not only wish fulfillment, it's actually very practical work. Very, for me, by the way. I caught who had a slide that I think, Sinead, about the importance of education as being fun. Absolutely. Fundamental was that you, Sinead. Yeah, in any event. Okay, there are probably 300 million kids not even in school right now. And we have to absolutely say no. Are you kidding? Not another school year like this. This is crazy. And the reason they're not in school in some places is because of conflict and displacement. But for at least 250 million kids is because the governments don't have the funds to hire teachers to have the schools and so forth. And I want to have a fit together with you to the powers that be, that this cannot go on any longer. You cannot leave kids out of school in this world. They cannot have a future that way. This is the most basic point of everything that we're trying to do. Everything, every one of you had the fortune, and you probably had a lot of struggles, twists and turns, good luck, parents that helped friends, that helped family, that helped somehow, that you could get an education. But I think that's the first thing we really need to do is to put our foot down and say no more faking it to the host countries. But they don't have the money to the IMF, to the World Bank, to China, to anyone else. You got to help make sure that all the kids are in school, period. And then there are all the other issues that we're dealing with. I won't belabor the point any longer because I know the time is short. But you guys are really important in this process. And to add to your importance, connect with others that you think we need to bring into this process, because this is a very powerful group that can really make a huge difference and can really, by the way, you can help the older ministers in the government, the presidents and so forth. Understand, this is no joke. This is real for your societies. This really can be done. You can tell them Professor Sachs said so, and that they got to get on with it, and that we're here to help, and we're going to get the financing that they need. We really are going to get the financing that governments need. But you need to help lay out the plans, the ideas, very operational, the wonderful things that can be done, and really inspire your countries and your friends, and the businesses you're dealing with, and think very, very big. And let's plan to meet every few weeks to keep